Welcome to Fredericksburg Mission, a podcast talking all things mental health and wellness in the Burgh. Brought to you by...
How do you shorten the time it takes to buy a car? Car buying just got easier. Pohanka365.com lets you complete as much or as little of the car buying process online. Pohanka365.com. Car buying simplified. Anytime, anywhere.
Welcome to Fredericksburg Mission Podcast. My name is Angela Rivers, and I am here today with Gabby, Tripp, a social worker with UMFS Fredericksburg Regional Center. Welcome, Gabby.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And you look lovely.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you. I'd love to kick off this podcast by you just telling people what it's like to be a social worker and what you do for UMFS.
Okay. So I have been in the professional social work probably about 4 years now. And so my work with UMFS has been great. It's rewarding. It's challenging, which I like. My job as a social worker for UMFS is to work with families. I have a previous background more so on the court side. And so now I get to kind of help kids once they come into foster care, make sure they get appropriate services that they need, whether it's medical or mental health, and then also to help foster parents navigate that tricky system of foster care.
Yeah, and then it must be nice having that background, too, of being on the court side so you can help advocate in certain ways as a social worker.
Yes, it helps. A lot of people, when they come into foster care, the questions are kind of like, how does this work? What are the processes? What are there to look forward to? And sometimes when kids come into care, sometimes it's more planned, but most of the time it's pretty spontaneous. And so they kind of get dealt this task and try to have to figure it out. And so it's helpful to know the DSS side as well as the mental health and the medical referral side of it.
Yeah, and then where did you work in the court system? Was it in a different state? Was it in Virginia?
No, so I'm originally from Mississippi, if you can tell by maybe the tone of my voice. So I originally worked at CPS for about a little short of 3 years in Mississippi. And I did in-home, which is when you do prevention. So you do your best and you provide services to keep children in home. I did investigations, which sometimes led to kids coming to foster care. And then I also did foster care cases. And so I did a little bit, after a while, I became specialized in investigations, so I have a little insight on why and how foster care works and how kids come into care.
So how do they come into care?
Or
why,
So I can't speak for everyone, but I know for a fact that most state and counties foster care is the absolute last resort. Most likely or most prominently, kids come into custody because their family's system is broken and they require, whether it's long-term or short-term, help to fix that family system or create a new one while still helping the child be attached to their original family, biological family.
And is it as scary as people think? I mean, when people hear CPS, they think, and kids going into foster care, they think it's, they're getting bombarded in the middle of the night and the doors are breaking down and they're coming in and they're pulling out the kids. But that's not always the case.
No. So there are a lot of federal rules and laws assigned to doing investigations for kids in care. There's even a system that it goes through to determine whether referrals for investigation are valid. And then that goes down and it goes and assigned to a worker. And it's usually a process that's done between 30 to 60 days, depending on your county and state. And then the ultimate goal, though, is to try to do everything you can within that time frame to prevent custody. And if custody has to be taken, then you go through the court system that has a stringent amount of days and weeks and time that a child needs to be returned home. And then the family gets a lot of services that's offered to both the child and the biological family.
Yeah, and people don't really know that, They think that foster care is more the first steps. They don't realize all the steps that are taken beforehand.
Prevent, yeah. So, yeah, it's unfortunately social work, and CPS has gotten that rap of they just come and take everybody's kids.
Right?
And
that's what you see on TV. Mm-hmm. So why does anybody think anything different,
And I can assure you it is a long process to do so, and it is not a process that ever becomes easy or anyone wants to do, and it's absolutely the last resort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people don't want the kids to end up in foster care, but it is the way it is. Mm-hmm. And it's okay.
Yeah.
People, I think, think of it as a negative when it's really should be looked at as a positive.
It's unfortunate that we ever have to have a child welfare system. I think what's important is that we put the tools and the things into place to make a as seamless as possible system, to weed out some of the negativity that is brought into the system and to weed out any negative people that are brought into the system. So I think that's what the important piece is.
Yeah, and then as a social worker, you work with a lot of different families. And primarily, you handle a lot of the teen cases, which is a great specialty of yours. How do you empower the teens? How do you coach them, support them? How does that look?
So I love my teens. One of the biggest reasons are, unfortunately, in foster care, teens are the most forgotten. Foster parents often is like, I want to help, I want to give contribute to my community, but I only want 0 to such and such. Right. And it's like, okay, but our teens still need love. And it's sad because they are literally like our future, just like the little kiddos are. Right. But they're closer to being the people that we live among in our daily lives. And so the way that I've tried to empower them is trying to be as understanding as possible. I try to stay away from the cliche statements that I think they hear a lot, and just being open and honest with them about the world that they're going to grow into. Not scare them, but be open and honest about it. And then all my kids know I love scenarios because I'm not with you all the time. But if I can try to prepare you for the things that are to come, that's what's important. And so just talking with them, trying to understand them, most importantly, meeting them where they are. And that's kind of how I've been able to navigate my teens and have positive and hope and lasting relationships that affect them even as they grow older.
Yeah, and that I think is so important, is to meet them where they are. As for foster parents, for staff, for friends of foster parents, to meet the kids where they are. They come in because of some type of trauma, usually. And so it's important to understand what they're going through. It's not going to look the same for every child.
That's great. And I think that's the perceived notion. I think people automatically assume teens are going to be hard to deal with. They try to stay away because, how do I parent someone who essentially has been their own parent their whole life? And it's not easy. No. But I always try to remind people, like, growing up, my mom used to always say, having your own biological children doesn't mean they turn out any particular way. And so it would be unfair to judge a teen to think they should be a certain way.
Yeah. And I mean, when I'm recruiting families, they're always so scared to take teens. Is there anything you would let the listeners know that it's okay to take teens? Any type of inspiring quote or anything like that?
Don't have any expectations. Yeah. If you expect something to be a certain way, your early subconscious is going to act a certain way towards someone.
It's true.
Kids can pick up everything. They pick up things that you don't even realize how you feel. And so I think going into it with no expectations is important. And then also realizing that teenagers deserve to have love and know what a functional family and a loyal family is before they begin to conquer this world on their own. Like, that's really important. Because those same teens are going to interact with your biological kids or your nieces and nephews. And so it's important that they know what a loving and functional family should look like.
Certainly all kids do. All parents, families, everyone should learn what that feels like. I feel like sometimes we forget to show people that we care.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then I'm sure, especially if you work in the court system, that you've heard a lot of misconceptions.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love for you to share some that you heard and how those views are different.
So one of the biggest ones that I think I've come into, even with sometimes doing home studies or just talking with foster parents or people that want to become foster parents, is I don't want a sexually abused child. I can't have a sexually abused child because they're going to either accuse someone in my home or something, or they might act out. And I think it's important that people start to realize that a lot has been studied and is starting to be knowledgeable about kids who have endured sexual abuse, and that every child that is sexually abused does not act out. And most importantly, you don't always know when a child has been sexually abused. Most victims don't say anything until later on when they feel safe and secure. Well, if you're coming in foster care, most likely you don't feel safe and secure. So that won't be found out till later on. Yeah. And so you have a lot of great kids that grow to be really great and special kids, and nobody ever knew. And so I think that's important that people start to put that old way of thinking to the side and then realize there are a lot of therapeutic interventions now for sexual abuse victims that they can partake in and not have to worry about acting out in the future. So
yeah, and that's the hardest type of family to find, parents that will take a sexually abused child.
And then understand that technology has changed. So there's a lot of different ways to monitor children now. That doesn't require you monitoring them in an unsafe or preventing them from having privacy, but there's a lot of ways to monitor kids now. And so let's take this newfound technology and these new therapeutic interventions and give these kids functional and loving families, because ultimately that's going to determine how they be in the future.
Yeah. Have you heard any other misconceptions?
Other ones, CPS always takes people kids. Obviously, that's one. Social workers are only CPS. That's a big one, that misconception that people have. Others are that kids come into care only because they were directly affected by abuse, neglect, or drugs or things of that nature. And that's not always true. So,
especially this year, too, where families are already struggling. Then they end up struggling even more.
And they sometimes have families that struggle financially. Sometimes it is indirect drug abuse, and that aunts and grandmothers take over to take care of the kids. And recently, since schools and medical care have really started to zone in on legal guardianship, a lot of kids came into care simply because they were being taken care of by family members who didn't have legal guardianship. And so that's opened up the new door to kinship care, which is a really great thing in foster care that has started to become prevalent. So
let's talk about that for a minute, because we do at UMFS, we do have kinship care. And so it's kind of one of those services that is, what do I want to say,
underway.
Yeah. I mean, no, but people don't really hear about it as much. You hear about, foster care, you hear about adoption, but people don't really know about kinship care. So let's talk about that a little bit. What does that look like?
So kinship care it's a range. So it could be someone that is biologically related to you. It also can be. As maybe mom, something happened to mom and mom has a best friend that's played a role in your life. That person would be considered kinship care. And so the idea is that we place kids with family first, or fictive kin, which might be a godparent or something along that nature, first, and then we move on to seeing if we have to place them in a foster care system with people they don't know. Ideally, kids do better with people that they know, and they're able to heal better and move forward, whether it's returning home or adoption or just staying in foster care until they age out. And so the idea is that placing them with family is ideal, and it keeps that family system going, but also in hopes to end some generational issues that family might be going through. So,
and then why would it behoove somebody to take those services versus just stepping up and taking care of the child?
So one big thing is legal guardianship. So one of the biggest sufferers is a lot of people don't always know how to get it, can't always afford to do it. And then if you don't have the parent present or is willing to do the legal guardianship, it's really it's not impossible, but it's pretty hard. And so just like having a kid with a foster parent, sometimes kinship, it's also a struggle. And so having those extra services there are beneficial to kind of help realize, how can I take this child and mesh it together and create a good family unit.
And so what are those different services? Who are the different people that, when a child is placed with a family, who are the different people you interact with and the family does as well?
So, of course, there's therapists. It's a good idea to do family unit therapy. There are, obviously, if a child has medical issues, there's the medical team that they kind of mesh with. It's a really big multidisciplinary team. And so it's a little bit of everybody. So the child needs services, you work with the school, you work with therapists, you work with, sometimes it's a court system. Also UMFS. So you can come in kinship care with UMFS and have a TFC worker that's there to help guide you through kind of navigating behaviors that may not be present in your home and how you can adjust to it and the child adjust to you.
Yeah, just a real team approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, we started an annual fund this year, which was super exciting. A lot of the, being a nonprofit, there are certain things you can and can't provide. And so we started this fund to be able to go the extra mile. At UMFS, we're prided as unwavering champions. So this is just another way to be that champion for our families and our kids. And it's called Campaign Heal for anyone that's listening. But you have been so exceptional at how we use the funds to support the families. A lot of times donors want to know, where did my money go? What am I paying for? Why is it important? And so I'd love for you to share just some of the ways that you used the funds this year to help support the families.
So for some of my kiddos, I did a lot of sensory, out-the-box sensory items that we can't normally be able to pay for, either through Medicaid or through board payment. And so I use a lot of out of the box sensory items. I also was able to come up with some creative technologies to kind of help sibling groups that are at risk either due to violence or previous sexual abuse. And so just keeping them safe. Other options are my teens. My teens don't really care for traditional therapy methods. And so I've been able to incorporate a lot of music therapy in which they're able to write songs and be able to showcase their talents and utilize and record music about how their lives and how it has affected them and share that with others, which has been really great. Other things are providing DNA testing for cultural background as well as for medical and finding a kinship care for sibling groups because we don't have a lot of family information and no one is able to come forward. And so that's been a great help. So.
Yeah. And then has there been like one time where you use the funds that you can just remember how, empowering it was for the child?
Yeah. So, for instance, my teens, like I have a couple of them, they all really, really, music has really spoke to them. And so to hear that someone cared about them finding an outlet that they could relate to, like just to hear a child that was currently in crisis and to hear that, like, really, like someone cares, and that was really nice.
Yeah, because they've been feeling like people don't care, like people gave up on them, and so it's nice to be able to stick it out and to help them in all the ways they need.
Yeah, because they often feel like everyone else runs the show, and not them.
Especially as a teenager, even just in general, teenagers always feel like everybody else runs the show and they want a voice, and they're starting to grow and adapt and become that voice, but they still are a kid.
Right. And so it was really inspiring to them. And it kind of gives a sense of hope. Like, okay, there's others out there who recognize and see me and see needs that I have. And they're not obligated to it. And that means a lot. So,
do you have any other plans in the works?
So I'm working to hopefully some kids, I have a couple kids that want to become veterinarians and stuff in the future, and so hopefully getting them to be able to do like equine therapy, so we're able to mix therapy along with the work of working with animals on a farm, and they're close to going to college, and so hopefully that's a nice push for them to go ahead and pursue their career.
Have you heard any great studies about how that therapy helps?
Yes. So equine therapy is really great for children with attachment. And anytime you really deal with foster kids, it is a worry about attachment and how they're able to overcome having been either separated from their family unit or having a broken family unit, and being able to move forward and have great relationships and meaningful relationships and safe relationships with others. And so equine therapy has been a great help to the kids like that, especially teens who do not care for traditional therapy methods. It's a great way of kind of sliding it in there, and then also giving them responsibility to take care of someone other than themselves, which has hopefully leads in the future to involving more girls, and having that caretaker role will hopefully prevent the need to create their own small families, which is very common among foster girls.
Is there anything that you've thought of for the families as well?
So it's a lot of work and it's a lot of stress, and they don't always have the answers, and they do really well. I know our foster parents at UMFS do a really good job by sticking out and sticking it through. And so throwing in some great incentives in there for them to help, even some relaxation incentives would be great. But also things that help them be able to help the kids and work and do things with the kids has been a purpose and important.
And has there been a time when, you've been doing this for however many years where you thought, I'm making a difference?
Yes. So teens have always been kind of the one that is like, hey, you want a teen to dance? Yeah, I'll take it. So I think the hardest part is when they're close to aging out and you're like biting your fingers like, oh God, this is like, it's not sticking. Yeah. Like all these lessons, all these things we're teaching, it doesn't seem to be showing. And then they kind of get on that line and they go above your expectations. And I've had some go to college, I've had some graduate, I've had some just find meaningful careers and live an honest living, and that is so rewarding because that is literally like you have passed someone else through and they've changed their generational issues and create meaningful lives for themselves.
And a lot of people ask, what happens to the kids as they age out? People are always so scared, or they want to provide, or they want to help the children, as they age out. But, is there anything you would like to tell people about, it's not always doom and gloom, the kids do thrive.
They do thrive, and they are already the most resilient kids that you'll ever meet. And so they already have that tool to really make it. And all they kind of need sometimes is someone to believe in them and to kind of help push them and let them know it'll be okay. And so hopefully in the next coming years, Virginia as well as other states will begin to push more so for independent living and provide more services to help them be able to move on to the other side, because their feelings, their traumas, it doesn't stop. It doesn't go away because they turn 18 and age out.
No, and even as they grow into an adulthood, it'll still be there. And how can they cope? That's what's important. And then do you help the kids with independent living skills?
Yes. So that is one of my big, I want to say pet peeves, but really important things is I want to make sure that you're okay, because one day, if you choose to, you might age out and you might decide not to sign into foster care and stay until you're 21. And so I need to be able to give you all the tools that I can so you're going to learn your lessons, because we all do, no matter what family you come from. But hopefully you have to learn less lessons. And so that's my big thing. It's like trying to incorporate budget balancing, making sure you have your documents and everything you need to move forward and get the proper, whether it's you want to attend school. If you don't want to attend school, okay, well, is there a trade that would be good for you? If there's not a trade, well, is there an industry that we can make sure that you can work in, and then make sure you have all the tools so that you could just seamlessly pass through to that.
Yeah, that's great. Even as, a parent myself, being able to coach my children to do that, I feel like it's more and more prevalent these days to help coach children to have those independent living skills. I feel like as I was growing up, it wasn't always the same. I don't know about how it was in Mississippi, but I think it's so important, for you to empower these kids to see the future.
And they definitely are our future. And so just investing in them is ultimately kind of investing in ourselves. And just investing in, these are the kids that will be around your own kids. And like I said, your nieces, your nephews, aunts, uncles, and all those. So,
is it different here, foster care wise, than it is in Mississippi?
The process is pretty much the same because it's the federal guidelines. But I have noticed that the process in which the courts works are a little bit different. With Mississippi, there was some time where the federal government stepped in, and with Olivia versus Y, we're able to have a little more federal guidelines. And so a lot of things that were broken in our system, we were able to, or forced to be fixed. And so I do notice some of those differences here. It's because they don't quite have the same guidelines, but ultimately it's pretty close to the same.
A lot of people ask, or they say, I have a friend who fostered in North Carolina. Is it the same here? And it's not always the same. It's similar,
right,
but not always exactly the same.
No, because every court system works differently. They all have to prescribe to the same laws, but they go by different ways. The workers are different. Temperaments are different. Culture is different. Yeah. And so I would always say, don't let someone else's good or bad story play into what you think your story will be.
Yeah.
And absolutely go into it with no expectations, even if they're good expectations.
Yeah, that's so true, because foster parents will come in and they'll often think, I would, you come in and you're like, this is my ideal picture of a family, and this placement's going to be perfect and nothing's going to go wrong. But it's not always, peachy keen. And so it's, you got to just stick it out and hold their hand and be there through the tough and the good times.
And it's unfair. It's unfair to children to
it's so
assume
unfair
that they're either going to be bad because they're our foster children, or that they're going to be good, or that they should be so happy to be in your home and to receive services. It's a complicated feeling, and it's not easy to be, whether you came from the worst home, to be taken from that home and placed somewhere else. It's hard to adjust to.
So hard.
And so it's really unfair to have preconceived notions of what a child should or shouldn't feel like.
Exactly. You got to meet them where they're at, too. Yeah. And then, is there anything that, keeps you going every day? This is a hard job and it's tiring, and but it's also so, there are so many great moments, too. So is there anything that keeps you going?
I think what helps me is I didn't necessarily pick social work. I literally fell into it.
So let's talk about that.
So originally I went to school, University of Southern Mississippi, for nursing, and I hated chemistry apparently, and so I decided that I would.
Most of us do. I do.
I decided to follow in my mother's footsteps and go with criminal justice. So I had this big idea. I was going to graduate, and I don't know. I was going to join the force. I go join the marshals. I don't know, but
What
I had.
did your mama do?
She was a probation officer for 13 years in Texas. So I was like, I don't know what I was going to do, but criminal justice was like, okay, I understand it. I know about it. I'm going to go for it. And so I did. I got my criminal justice degree in 2016. And,
speaking of teaching kids how to, have those independent living skills.
So I worked originally in the juvenile justice system at first. And so an opportunity came to work for Child Protection Services. I was like, who? Because I hadn't really been exposed to that. Like, I knew of it, but not much about it growing up. And so I was like, okay. So I took it, and I had a friend girl who worked there originally, and she was like, I was planning on going to school. I was like, well, I'm going to get off at such and such time, and I'll go to class. And she was like, no, you won't. And I was like, what? And so
long hours. Yeah.
I took that opportunity, and I don't regret it, and I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was definitely challenging work, emotionally taxing sometimes. And so that's how I got into social work, and I decided to pursue and get my master's in social work, and that was that. And I've been kind of glued to it like a bunch of cord for about 4 or 5 years now. So not really. I think that's what keeps me going is knowing that it was apparently maybe my purpose and not necessarily just a choice. And so that helps me a lot.
You fell into your purpose. I feel like we do that. We always try to find our purpose, and I feel like you can't really find it until it's in front of you.
And that's exactly what happened.
And what do you think about working for UMFS?
I
No pressure.
And I can genuinely say from the bottom of my heart, like I have very much enjoyed my time at UMFS. I moved to Virginia January of 2020, and as we know, we kind of all got locked down in March, and so
I got to see you for just a couple months.
I know. I don't even think. I think I put a picture. I had one picture in the office and one furry rug, and that was it. And so it has been an agency that has walked me through it, has supported me. And I've also watched it support my foster parents and my kids and genuinely care about them. And that to me has been important. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're in systems, numbers play a big game. Numbers and money plays a game. And that's just the way it goes. And UMFS has found a way to not only be successful in that game, but also to actually genuinely care. And that has been really rewarding and really nice.
It makes all of the difference.
It makes all of the difference.
Yeah, certainly. And how is being a social worker during the pandemic? How have things changed? Has anything been, difficult or more of a struggle?
I think technology has been a big help. And technology has really helped with reaching out to our teens. So our teens appreciate the in-person and all of those things, but something about when you have to put technology to use for you, it's been great. Yeah. So
they don't have a cell phone.
No. Everything is on this, like, you're talking to them anyway, and they're like this. Yeah. So to be able to talk to them through something that they're going to stare at anyway, it makes a difference in how you're able to communicate with them. And so, the pandemic has been interesting. And how do you still be there for people when you're used to being able to be in person and to be able to be like, hey, are you okay? And not being able to see people face to face. A lot of people don't get a lot of social interaction and they don't get to have time with people. And so it's really important to use that technology to be able to check in more. So it's been a struggle, but ultimately I think it's opened up a lot of doors for us to see how we can do things better. Yeah. Save time with a lot of the documentation piece and be able to turn towards the in-person or spending time with people piece, even if it's through a screen.
Yeah, and I think families are loving it too. From the recruitment end, when I can just pop on Zoom with a family to talk about what it looks like to become a foster parent versus making them rush from work or spend their whole Saturday or try to find childcare. It's convenient.
It is.
And we're in that day and age where things are so fast and, convenience is key.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
So, yeah, the pandemic, I think, unfortunately, it happened, and it's a very sad thing, but I think it did push mental health care in general to see how we can be so much more productive by using our technology. So,
could you imagine this happening like 20 years ago?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
What would we have done? People talk about that, They're like, what would we have done if this was 20 years ago?
You stand outside in the yard with a megaphone. Are you okay? Then you have a whole bunch of HIPAA violations at that point.
That's true. We're not doing that. And so I love asking this question to all of our guests. At UMFS, we've said this, we pride our families, we pride our staff, we pride our children as being unwavering champions. So how do you view yourself as an unwavering champion?
Oh, I hope that, I think the way that I view myself is I'm going to kind of have like the tree understanding. So trees in theory, and I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong if science has changed, but in theory, trees take carbon dioxide, right, and give us oxygen. So without a bunch of trees, I guess someone would suffocate maybe, huh? So I try to see as the tree aspect that it is for me to take the things that are not always the pretty or the ugly or most useful and take those things and let's see if we can fix them or just at least acknowledge them and in return put out some good stuff that we can use. And so I'm hoping in that way that's how I've been able to be an unwavering champion. It's being able to take the things that aren't always so great or not the things that everyone wants and put out something that everyone needs. So.
Yeah, and you're so creative, which is so nice, for the kids and for the families.
And thank you for all you do. You're a really big help, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you.
Oh, thanks. You might.
No.
I don't know.
No.
Before we go, though, I'd love for you to just explain one thing that people always ask me as the recruiter, especially since you've been in the court system and all the different angles, what is TFC compared to just general foster care? What's the difference?
So
people are always scared.
I know.
So scared.
The notion is that anytime a child is removed from their home, there is some form of trauma that happens. Mm-hmm. And so, but there are kids that before they were removed from the home, or we know when they were removed from the home, they have exceptional needs, whether it be medical or whether it's mental health. And so TFC is a nice piece that adds a great multidisciplinary team to you automatically to help you be able to navigate the services and things that child needs in order to be able to function and hopefully either whether it's return home or be adopted or do permanent foster care. And so TFC is that piece that adds a nice extra cushion and a better understanding and services and help and education piece to foster parents for more challenging kids. And so I would like to say that's the best way that I try to describe it, the difference between TFC and general foster care, noting that all kids need love and services and things that help them repair. But a lot of times our TFC kids are a little bit more, need a little bit more cushion and a little bit more help. And that's what the TFC agency is here for.
So if someone's listening, what would you tell them, to not be scared?
I can explain it. You can raise your own,
right,
and they make decisions that you don't agree with or you don't like. And so never be afraid of any type of words. Don't be afraid of assumptions of what kids are. And don't be afraid of the therapeutic foster care. Because the reality is all kids really should be placed in therapeutic foster care. They all need that nice, loving, grounded, multidisciplinary team to protect them and give them what they deserve. And so don't be afraid of the name. And most importantly, don't make assumptions and don't have expectations.
Yeah, and even teens are considered therapeutic as well as sibling groups. Because they just need more TLC, basically. Well, a little bit more love, tender loving and care. Yeah.
And all kids want it, and all kids need it.
They do.
They respond to it at different rates, but it's not something that's an option. And so don't ever be afraid of the name.
Yeah. People always come into me and they say, oh, well, I don't know. I'm a little scared. It's not scary, You just got to have faith and believe in the team, too. We never give a family anything they can't handle,
right?
Which is really nice. We do a really good job at matching the family with the right fit child and the right child with the right fit family.
Mm-hmm. So just going into the idea that you're giving a child what you would need to give them, even if you want to call it general foster care, you're going into it with the same mindset and the same purpose. And so don't let the name persuade you.
I know. Is there anything else you would like to tell our listeners about being a social worker? You know, maybe there's somebody listening that is going off to college and really would love to be a social worker, but they're not sure. You know, what you do is such great work, and you help so many families and so many kids. You know, everything you've ever done is with heart in your field. And so I'd love for you to, if there's anything else you'd like to say, would be great.
I would say, there's so many pieces to social work. And I don't think I realized it even till I almost graduated with a master's. And I didn't even realize like how many doors there are attached to social work. Of course, there's the child welfare piece, but there's so much more. There's mental health, there's psychotherapy piece, there's the legislative process piece. So social workers play a really big part in helping legislative make rules, whether it's regarding mental health, medical care. And so there's that piece. There's the micro and macro line of social work. And ultimately, a social work is just the discipline of learning and bringing together different social, economic, justice, different cultural backgrounds, and bringing that together to make as well-rounded well-being as possible for people in their communities. And so I just encourage to see what it is you have a passion about and go after it. There's even social work for veterinary and hospitals. So social work touches a little bit of everything and everybody. And so if your passion is creating a nice glued system for your community, then I say go for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gabby. It's
Thank
so nice
you.
to have you on.
It was nice to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure I'll have you on again soon. And I'm really excited because we're wrapping up Foster Parent Appreciation Month. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and what you do and helping us celebrate our amazing foster families.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. This is Angela Rivers with Fredericksburg Mission. Of course, if you'd like to learn more about becoming a foster parent, please visit www.umfs.org/foster. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. I'm Angela Rivers with Fredericksburg Mission. Tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us again next week for our next episode.
How do you shorten the time it takes to buy a car? Car buying just got easier. Pohanka365.com lets you complete as much or as little of the car buying process online. Pohanka365.com. Car buying simplified. Anytime, anywhere.